From the director of Das Boot and Air Force One comes your childhood classic, The Neverending Story. What's up and welcome back? I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and I'm celebrating the 40th anniversary of The Neverending Story, which has like the most epic music in it from your childhood that you've ever remembered. You're just like, oh my god. And like you remember riding on just getting up there and riding on that, what was his name? The giant lion dragon thing. Um I Never-ending story for me has always been like this thing. The one scene that I always remember, other than that, before going into the movie, like, is the horse scene with Atreyu. His horse. I'm just like, scene wrecked me as a kid. I was like, no, they're not gonna do it. They're gonna, oh my god, they're doing it. Oh my god, they did it. You know, like as a kid, you're just like, that scene is so sad. And like Atreyu is so like affected throughout the remainder of the movie by that moment. And like so is the audience, so kids. Um, it's clever. Is it my favorite film from my childhood? No. But it's something that I think somebody looked at this and they tried to redo again 10 years later with The Page Master, which came out in 1994 with Macaulay Culkin, which is very similar in nature, just animated. Um, and this, it's this kid that he should be doing better in school. He needs to get his head on straight, but he loves reading fantasy books, so he goes and reads this book, and then lo and behold, turns out Bastion is in the book. Or is he? Or are we watching him? It's very meta, before like meta was ever a thing. We get to the end of this, it's a little bit spoilery. This movie's been around for 40 years. I don't know what to tell you. But when we get to the end and she's like trying to explain everything, you're like, what? It's like Inception. So he's like reading the book, and then he's controlling the ending to the book, and like he can help the end of the book. But then she also mentions, she's like, yes, he's part of the never-ending story. As he is connected to us, others are watching his story as well. And I'm like, oh they're acknowledging that he's not a real person, that he's in a movie, and that we're watching him. Wait a minute, are we being watched? Like, it gets very sort of it comes back around and you're like, wait a minute. Am I also part of the never ending? Who's reading my story? It's so weird that this is like Wolfgang Peterson followed up Das Boot with the never ending story. Anyway, yes. It doesn't feel like the kind of movie that he would make. And I totally did not realize he was the director of the never ending story. That's just me. I saw that and I was like, what? This film is only available with text-to-speech audio description, so have fun on the Amazon store, reliving your childhood, or through Prime, whatever, when it comes around. I like this movie. The story of Atreyu and this whole other world and these rock creatures, and it's a fantasy movie. It's great for kids. As an adult, if you don't have the deepest connection to Neverending Story, it's a fun fantasy movie, but I didn't have like, I wasn't paying to rewatch it again. But Neverending Story just for me wasn't one of my standouts from my childhood, so I've only seen it a couple of times, like maybe 2 or 3 prior to this, so I don't have that feeling. It didn't hit that nostalgia button for me. So I was a little bored at times. I was watching it again, even though I'm like, this is objectively a solid movie and I know it's a classic, but I feel like I would get more fun out of this if I was 8. So Has it stood the test of time? I don't know. I don't know if it stood the test of time or not, because I don't know how many kids are still watching Neverending Story. It feels incredibly 80s. It's the kind of thing where you would need your parents to have been connected to it to want them, for them to want to show you the Neverending Story. So I feel like it could be, um, but it doesn't strike me as being like a absolute yes. So maybe it is. Maybe there are enough people. I think there are people who are of a certain age who remember Neverending Story, certainly. But is Gen Alpha getting connected to Neverending Story? And like, if I walked up to an 18-year-old and was like, "Hey, Atreyu, what does that mean to you?" Would they know? Would they be like, "Oh yeah, I've seen that movie, Neverending Story. Thank you." Um, I've always wanted to name something Atreyu too, like a like a kid, a dog, something. Just have to be like, "Oh, that's Atreyu," just to see how many people like know, and like, "Oh yeah, Neverending Story." Because Bastion is too close to Sebastian, so people will just get lost in that, and they won't pick up the movie reference. But like, what else is Atreyu? Anyways, this is a weird review. It just didn't. It's sad when things that I'm like, oh yeah, I liked that as a kid. Now I don't like it as much as an adult. And then trying to figure out that how that works and where. So yeah, that's essentially where this went. Was I liked it as a kid, not so much as an adult. I'm balancing it out because I still think kids would like this, because I remember liking this as a kid, and I'm not trying to come in here as an adult and be like, this movie's garbage, because I don't think it is garbage. I just, my level of excitement for it has petered out. And it's more managed now. It's where a lot, honestly, my thoughts on a lot of films should be, but some of them aren't, because I do have that connection to films like The Wizard, um, which is not technically as good a proficient of a movie as this is, but yet I would rather watch The Wizard more than The Neverending Story, having seen both of those recently for anniversary releases. Anyway, Neverending Story. I'm gonna give it a B plus. Yeah, that's about where it balances how my childhood self felt about it with how my adult self feels about it. I feel like if my childhood self wouldn't have given this an A, wouldn't have said this is my top tier, would have said this is like a film that I like enough to watch when it's on. So two or three, maybe four times in my lifetime. This is like an A minus as a kid, right? I'm saying maybe like a B now. So B plus is probably a split the difference. I don't want kid version of me to come and be mad at me and be like, don't you remember all the times that horse died in the quicksand and how wrecked you were emotionally? And be like, I do remember that. That's the one thing I remember about this movie. So every time I watch Neverending Story, I'm like, God, I'm gonna have to watch that horse in the quicksand again. But yeah, it's still devastating. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Let me know what you think about the Neverending Story. I'm not reviewing the sequels. The sequels are not good. Well, 2 is fine. 3 is bad. 3 is just, I don't even think 3 went to theaters. So yeah, I'll see you guys on the other side.